So now that we've learned some basics for manipulating objects and moving the camera in Tinkercad, we're going to look at adding some Braille labels to a model. So I'm going to start with this angle measure model. And I already have my Braille generated using the OpenSCAD tool, and I have imported that into Tinkercad. And I'm just going to line up these Braille labels. So to start, I'm going to select my Braille label. That's 30 degrees. And I'm using Nemeth numbers here. I'm going to hold Shift so I can select more than one object. So I'm selecting the 30-degree label and the 30-degree angle. I'm going to press L to use the alignment tool. If I click on this far right dot here, it's going to align them along this right edge. And then if I click this top left dot here, that's going to align them along this back part. Okay, so those two are now aligned. I'm going to click out of them. I'll quickly kind of draw a box over them, and Command G or Control G if you're using Windows will group those two together. I'm going to do the same thing now with 45 degrees. L to use the lineup tool. And they're aligned. So I noticed on the 45 that the Braille doesn't seem to be sticking up the proper amount. And that's because that bottom plane there wasn't actually 2 millimeters the way this 30-degree one was. So to fix that up, I'm going to go ahead and just put a work plane on that top face there. And I'm going to use that as my measure, my reference point as I line these up. So I'm going to, just to make this one perfect as well, I'm going to tell it to, well, first I'll show you at 0. That will just set the label directly on top, but I know that the base for this label is 2 millimeters tall. So if I tell it to put this label at -2 millimeters, that's going to completely hide that base and show just the Braille. I'm going to press W again to bring up my work plane tool, and I'll put that work plane on the 45. I'm selecting that Braille label for the 45, and again I'll tell it -2, and that will have it drop just directly on there. So we'll hide the plate and just have the Braille showing. Okay. Press W and click the surface to go back to the original surface. Clicking my label, holding Shift and clicking the angle. L for the lineup tool. Okay, and these are lined up. I'm going to use that work plane trick to make sure that this one is sitting just how I want it to work. Okay. And this one here is the one that is your relation to the work plane. All right, almost done. Line these up. And very last, I'm going to do this 180-degree label. And this is going to be a little different than the others. So I'm going to put this label near where the print label is on the back. To kind of make this easier to see, I'm going to hide all of these other labels I've been working on. And I can do that with Command H or Control H if you're using Windows. Everything's hidden. If I want to see it all again, I can Command Shift H to unhide all those items. But again, I'll hide these. And I'm going to line these two models up. A lot of this should be familiar so far. Let's this one. Okay, so I lined it up in the corner, but we can see that the Braille is underneath the 180, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is use the work plane to help me align this Braille a little better. I'm going to put the work plane on the face of this print. And then I'm going to raise this model up and tell it to go to 0 millimeters from the face of the print. So that has the Braille kind of nicely right there next to the print. It may be a little too close. When you're labeling things in Braille, you want the label to be at least an 1/8 inch away, but within a 1/4 inch. And I know that an 1/8 of an inch is a little over 3 millimeters. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to pull this away about 4 millimeters. Okay. So now my label is far enough away from the print that the two of them shouldn't interact in a negative way. Okay. You might see on your models some lines. Here I have done some editing on this model where I added a little area on the left and I cut away some areas. To the right of that, you can see kind of the outline of where I did those things. Those things will not print, but in Tinkercad you can often see kind of the remnants of those edits. So now that I've finished adding all my Braille labels, I'm going to Control-Shift-H to show all my previous labels, and I'm done.